Section 41 of the Complete Poetical Works. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Aaron Stone. The Complete Poetical Works by Edgar Allan Poe. Section 41, Poems of Youth, Introduction. Letter to Mr. B. West Point, 1831. Dear B, believing only a portion of my former volume to be worthy a second edition, that small portion I thought it as well to include in the present book as to republish by itself. I have therefore herein combined Allan and Tamerlan with other poems hitherto unprinted, nor have I hesitated to insert from the minor poems now omitted, whole lines, and even passages, to the end that being placed in a fairer light, and the trash shaken from them in which they were embedded, they may have some chance of being seen by posterity. It has been said that a good critique on a poem may be written by one who is no poet himself. This, according to your idea and mine of poetry, I feel to be false. The less poetical the critic, the less just the critique, and the converse. On this account, and because there are but few these in the world, I would be as much ashamed of the world's good opinion as proud of your own. Another than yourself might here observe. Shakespeare is in possession of the world's good opinion, and yet Shakespeare is the greatest of poets. It appears, then, that the world judge correctly. Why should you be ashamed of their favorable judgment? The difficulty lies in the interpretation of the word judgment or opinion. The opinion is the world's truly, but it may be called theirs as a man would call a book his, having bought it. He did not write the book, but it is his. They did not originate the opinion, but it is theirs. A fool, for example, thinks Shakespeare a great poet, yet the fool has never read Shakespeare. But the fool's neighbor, who is a step higher on the Andes of the mind, whose head, that is to say his more exalted thought, is too far above the fool to be seen or understood, but whose feet, by which I mean his everyday actions, are sufficiently near to be discerned, and by means of which that superiority is ascertained, which but for them would never have been discovered. This neighbor asserts that Shakespeare is a great poet. The fool believes him, and it is henceforward his opinion. This neighbor's own opinion has, in like manner, been adopted from one above him, and so, ascendingly, to a few gifted individuals who kneel around the summit, beholding face to face the master spirit who stands upon the pinnacle. You are aware of the great barrier in the path of an American writer. He is read, of it all, in preference to the combined and established wit of the world. I say establish, for it is with literature as with law or empire. An established name is an estate in tenure, or a throne in possession. Besides, one might suppose that books, like their authors, improve by travel. Their having crossed the sea is, with us, so great a distinction. Our antiquaries abandon time for distance. Our very thoughts glance from the binding to the bottom of the title page, where the mystic characters which spell London, Paris, or Genia are precisely so many letters of recommendation. I mentioned just now a vulgar error as regards criticism. I think the notion that no poet can form a correct estimate of his own writings is another. I remarked before that in proportion to the poetical talent would be the justice of a critique upon poetry. Therefore, a bad poet would, I grant, make a false critique, and his self-love would infallibly bias his little judgment in his favor. But a poet, who is indeed a poet, could not, I think, fail of making a just critique. Whatever should be deducted on the score of self-love might be replaced on account of his intimate acquaintance with the subject. In short, we have more instances of false criticism than of just, where one's own writings are the test, simply because we have more bad poets than good. There are, of course, many objections to what I say. Milton is a great example of the contrary, but his opinion with respect to the paradise regained is by no means fairly ascertained. By what trivial circumstances men are often led to assert what they do not really believe. Perhaps an inadvertent word has descended to posterity. But, in fact, the paradise regained is little, if at all, inferior to the paradise lost, and is only supposed so to be because men do not like epics, whatever they may say to the contrary, and reading those of Milton in their natural order are too much wearied with the first to derive any pleasure from the second. I dare say Milton preferred Comus to either, if so justly. As I am speaking of poetry, it will not be amiss to touch slightly upon the most singular heresy in its modern history, the heresy of what is called, very foolishly, the Lake School. Some years ago I might have been induced, by an occasion like the present, to attempt a formal refutation of their doctrine. At present it will be a work of supererogation. The wise must bow to the wisdom of such men as Coleridge and Southey, but, being wise, have laughed at poetical theories so prosaically exemplified. Aristotle, with singular assurance, has declared poetry the most philosophical of all writings. But it required a Wordsworth to pronounce it the most metaphysical. He seems to think that the end of poetry is, or should be, instruction. Yet it is a truism that the end of our existence is happiness. If so, the end of every separate part of our existence, everything connected with our existence, should still be happiness. Therefore, the end of instruction should be happiness, and happiness is another name for pleasure. Therefore, the end of instruction should be pleasure. Yet we see the above-mentioned opinion implies precisely the reverse. To proceed, ceteris paribus, he who pleases is of more importance than his fellow men than he who instructs, since utility is happiness, and pleasure is the end already obtained, which instruction is merely the means of obtaining. I see no reason, then, why our metaphysical poets should plume themselves so much on the utility of their works, unless indeed they refer to instruction with eternity in view, in which case, sincere respect for their piety would not allow me to express my contempt for their judgment, contempt which it would be difficult to conceal, since their writings are professedly to be understood by the few, and it is the many who stand in need of salvation. In such case, I should no doubt be tempted to think of the devil in Melmoth, who labors indefatigably, through 3 octavo volumes, to accomplish the destruction of 1 or 2 souls, while any common devil would have demolished 1 or 2,000. Against the subtleties which would make poetry a study, not a passion, it becomes the metaphysician to reason, but the poet to protest. Yet Wordsworth and Coleridge are men in years, the one imbued in contemplation from his childhood, the other a giant in intellect and learning. The difference, then, with which I venture to dispute their authority would be overwhelming did I not feel, from the bottom of my heart, that learning has little to do with the imagination, intellect with the passions, or age with poetry. Trifles, like straws upon the surface flow, he who would search for pearls must dive below, are lines which have done much mischief. As regards to the greater truths, men oftener err by seeking them at the bottom than at the top. Truth lies in the huge abysses where wisdom is sought, not in the palpable places where she is found. The ancients were not always right in hiding the goddess in a well. Witness the light which Bacon has thrown upon philosophy. Witness the principles of our divine faith, that moral mechanism by which the simplicity of a child may overbalance the wisdom of a man. We see an instance of Coleridge's liability to err in his Biographia Literaria, professedly his literary life and opinions, but, in fact, a treatise de omni scibili et quibusidam aliis. He goes wrong by reason of his very profundity, and of his error we have a natural type in the contemplation of a star. He who regards it directly and intensely sees, it is true, the star, but it is the star without a ray, while he who surveys it less inquisitively is conscious of all for which the star is useful to us below, its brilliancy and its beauty. As to Wordsworth, I have no faith in him. That he had in youth feelings of a poet, I believe, for there are glimpses of extreme delicacy in his writings, and delicacy is the poet's own kingdom, his El Dorado. But they have the appearance of a better day recollected, and glimpses, at best, are little evidence of present poetic fire. We know that a few straggling flowers spring up daily in the crevices of the glacier. He was to blame in wearing away his youth in contemplation with the end of poetizing in his manhood. With the increase of his judgment, the light which should make it apparent has faded away. His judgment, consequently, is too correct. This may not be understood, but the old Goths of Germany would have understood it, who used to debate matters of importance to their state twice, once when drunk and once when sober. Sober, that they might not be deficient in formality; drunk, lest they should be destitute of vigor. The long, wordy discussions by which he tries to reason us into admiration of his poetry speak very little in his favor. They are full of such assertions as this. I have opened one of his volumes at random. Of genius the only proof is the act of doing well what is worthy to be done, and what was never done before. Indeed? Then it follows that in doing what is unworthy to be done, or what has been done before, no genius can be evinced. Yet the picking of pockets is an unworthy act. Pockets have been picked time immemorial, and Barrington, the pickpocket, in point of genius, would have thought hard of a comparison with William Wordsworth, the poet. Again, in estimating the merit of certain poems, whether they be Ossian's or Macpherson's, can surely be of little consequence. Yet, in order to prove their worthlessness, Mr. W. has expended many pages in the controversy. Tatiente amiis? Can great minds descend to such absurdity? But worse still, that he may bear down every argument in favor of these poems, he triumphantly drags forward a passage in his abomination with which he expects the reader to sympathize. It is the beginning of the epic poem Tomorrow. The blue waves of Allan roll in the light, the green hills are covered with day, trees shake their dusty heads in the breeze. And this gorgeous yet simple imagery, where all is alive and panting with immortality, this William Wordsworth, the author of Peter Bell, has selected for his contempt. We shall see what better he, in his own person, has to offer. Imprimis. And now she's at the pony's tail, and now she's at the pony's head. On that side now, and now on this, and, almost stifled with her bliss, a few sad tears does Betty shed. She pats the pony, where or when, she knows not. Happy Betty Fool! Oh, Johnny, never mind the doctor. Secondly, the dew was falling fast, the stars began to blink. I heard a voice, it said, "Drink, pretty creature, drink." And looking o'er the hedge, before me I espied a snow-white mountain lamb, with a maiden at its side. No other sheep was near, the lamb was all alone, and by a slender cord was tethered to a stone. Now we have no doubt this is all true. We will believe it. Indeed, we will. Mr. W. Is it sympathy for the sheep you wish to excite? I love a sheep from the bottom of my heart. But there are occasions, dear B., there are occasions when even Wordsworth is reasonable. Even Stamboul, it is said, shall have an end, and the most unlucky blunders must come to a conclusion. Here is an extract from his preface. Those who have been accustomed to the phraseology of modern writers, if they persist in reading this book to a conclusion, impossible, will, no doubt, have to struggle with feelings of awkwardness. Ha! 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 They will look round for poetry, ha, 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 and will be induced to inquire by what species of courtesy these attempts have been permitted to assume that title. Ha, 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 ha. Yet let not Mr. W. despair. He has given immortality to a wagon, and the bee Sophocles has transmitted to eternity a sore toe, and dignified a tragedy with a chorus of turkeys. Of Coleridge I cannot speak but with reverence. His towering intellect, his gigantic power. To use an author quoted by himself, J'ai trouvé souvent que la plupart des sectes ont raison dans une bonne partie de ce qu'elles avancent, mais n'ont pas in ce qu'elles nient. And to employ his own language, he has imprisoned his own conceptions by the barrier he has erected against those of others. It is lamentable to think that such a mind should be buried in metaphysics, and, like the Nicanthes, waste its perfume upon the night alone. In reading that man's poetry, I tremble like one who stands upon a volcano, conscious from the very darkness bursting from the crater, of the fire and the light that are weltering below. What is poetry? Poetry! That Proteus-like idea, with as many appellations as the nine-tilted Clochaira. Give me, I demanded of a scholar some time ago, give me a definition of poetry. Très volontiers, and he proceeded to his library, brought me a Dr. Johnson, and overwhelmed me with a definition. Shade of the immortal Shakespeare! I imagined to myself the scowl of your spiritual eye upon the profanity of that scurrilous Ursa Major. Think of poetry, dear bee. Think of poetry, and then think of Dr. Samuel Johnson. Think of all that is airy and fairy-like, and then of all that is hideous and unwieldy. Think of his huge bulk, the elephant, and then think of the Tempest, the Midsummer Night's Dream, Prospero, Oberon, and Titania. A poem, in my opinion, is opposed to a work of science by having, for its immediate object, pleasure, not truth; to romance by having, for its object, an indefinite instead of a definite pleasure, being a poem only so far as this object is attained; romance presenting perceptible images with definite, poetry with indefinite sensations, to which end music is an essential, since the comprehension of sweet sound is our most indefinite conception. Music, when combined with a pleasurable idea, is poetry. Music without the idea is simply music. The idea without music is prose, from its very definitiveness. What was meant by the invective against him who had no music in his soul? To sum up this long rigmarole, I have, dear bee, what you, no doubt, perceive, for the metaphysical poets as poets, the most sovereign contempt. That they have followers proves nothing. No Indian prince has to his palace more followers than a thief to the gallows. End of section 41.
Sonnet to Science by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Trevor Flynn. Science, true daughter of old time thou art, who alterest all things with thy peering eyes. Why preyest thou thus upon the poet's heart, vulture, whose wings are dull realities? How should he love thee, or how deem thee wise, who wouldst not leave him in his wandering to seek for treasure in the jeweled skies, albeit he soared with an undaunted wing? Hast thou not dragged Diana from her car, and driven the Hamadryad from the wood to seek a shelter in some happier star? Hast thou not torn the Naiad from her flood, the elfin from the green grass, and from me the summer dream beneath the tamarind tree? 1829. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Section 43 of The complete poetical works. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Matthew Bennett. The Complete Poetical Works by Edgar Allan Poe, Section 43, Al-Araf. 1. Oh, nothing earthly save the ray, thrown back from flowers of beauty's eye, as in those gardens where the day springs from the gems of Circasse. Oh, nothing earthly save the shrill of melody and woodland rill, or music of the passion-hearted joy's voice so peacefully departed, that like the murmur in the shell its echo dwelleth and will dwell. Oh, nothing of the dross of ours, yet all the beauty, all the flowers, that list our love and deck our bowers, adorn yon world, afar, afar the wandering star. 'Twas a sweet time for Nisaki, for there her world lay lolling on the golden air near 4 bright suns, a temporary rest, an oasis in the desert of the blest. Away, away, mid seas of rays that roll, empyrean splendor o'er the unchained soul. The soul that scarce, the billows are so dense, can struggle to its destined eminence. To distant spheres from time to time she rode, and late to ours, the favored one of God. But now, the ruler of an anchored realm, she throws aside the scepter, leaves the helm, and, amid incense and high spiritual hymns, laves in quadruple light her angel limbs. Now happiest, loveliest in yon lovely earth, whence sprang the idea of beauty into birth, falling in wreaths though many a startled star, like a woman's hair mid pearls, until afar it lit on hills Achaean, and there dwelt. She looked into infinity and knelt. Rich clouds for canopies about her curled, fit emblems of the model of her world, seen but in beauty, not impeding sight of other beauty glittering through the light. A wreath that twined each starry form around, and all the opaled air in color bound. All hurriedly she knelt upon a bed of flowers, of lilies such as reared the head on the fair Capo de Ocato, and sprang so eagerly around about to hang upon the flying footsteps of deep pride, of her who loved a mortal and so died. The Sepalica, budding with young bees, upreared its purple stem around her knees, and Gemmy-flower, of Trebizond misnamed, inmate of highest stars where erst it shamed all other loveliness, its honeyed dew, the fabled nectar that the heathen knew, deliriously sweet was dropped from heaven, and fell on gardens of the unforgiven. In Trebizond, and on a sunny flower, so like its own, above that to this hour, it still remaineth, torturing the bee with madness and unwonted reverie. In heaven and all its environs, the leaf and blossom of the fairy plant, in grief disconsolate linger, grief that hangs her head, repenting follies that full long have fled, heaving her white breast to the balmy air, like guilty beauty, chastened and more fair. Nyctanthes too, as sacred as the light, she fears to perfume, perfuming the night, and Clydia, pondering between many a sun, while pettish tears adown her petals run, and that aspiring flower that sprang on earth and died, ere scarce exalted into birth, bursting its odorous heart in spirit to wing its way to heaven from garden of a king, and Vallisnerian lotus, thither flown from struggling with the waters of the Rhone, and thy most lovely purple perfume, Zante, Isole d'oro, fior di Levante, and the Nelumbo bud that floats forever with Indian Cupid down the holy river. Fair flowers and fairy, to whose care is given to bear the goddess's song and odors up to heaven. Spirit, that dwellest where in the deep sky the terrible and fair in beauty vie, beyond the line of blue, the boundary of the star, which turneth at the view of thy barrier and thy bar of the barrier overgone, by the comets who were cast from their pride, and from their throne to be drudges till the last, to be carriers of fire, the red fire of their heart, with speed that may not tire, and with pain that shall not part, who livest, that we know in eternity we feel, but the shadow of whose brow what spirit shall reveal? Though the beings whom thy Nisaki, thy messenger, hath known, have dreamed for thy infinity a model of their own, thy will is done, O God. The star hath ridden high through many a tempest, but she rode beneath thy burning eye, and here, in thought to thee, in thought that can alone ascend thy empire, and so be a partner of thy throne. By winged fantasy my embassy is given, till secrecy shall knowledge be in the environs of heaven. She ceased, and buried then there her burning cheek, abashed amid the lilies there to seek a shelter from the fervor of his eye. For the stars trembled at the deity. She stirred not, breathed not, for a voice was there, how solemnly pervading the calm air, a sound of silence on the startled ear, which dreamy poets name the music of the sphere. Ours is a world of words, quiet we call silence, which is the merest word of all. All nature speaks, and even ideal things flap shadowy sounds from the visionary wings. But not so, when thus in realms on high the eternal voice of God is passing by, and the red winds are withering in the sky. What though in worlds which sightless cycles run, linked to a little system and one sun, where all my love is folly and the crowd still think my terrors but the thunder cloud, the storm, the earthquake, and the ocean wrath? Will they cross me in my angrier path? What though in worlds which own a single sun the sands of time grow dimmer as they run, yet thine is my resplendency, so given to bear my secrets through the upper heaven. Leave tenantless thy crystal home and fly with all thy train athwart the moony sky, apart like fireflies in Sicilian night, and wing to other worlds and other light. Divulge the secrets of thy embassy to the proud orbs that twinkle, and so be to every heart a barrier and a ban, lest the stars totter in the guilt of man. Up rose the maiden and the yellow night, the single-mooned eve. On earth we plight our faith to one love, and one moon adore. The birthplace of young beauty had no more. As sprang that yellow star from downy hours, up rose the maiden from her shrine of flowers, and bent o'er sheeny mountains and dim plain her way, but left not yet her Theresian reign. 2. High on a mountain of enamelled head, such as the drowsy shepherd on his bed of giant pasturage lying at his ease, raising his heavy eyelid, starts and sees, with many a muttered hope to be forgiven, what time the moon is quadrated in heaven, of rosy head that towering far away into the sunlit ether caught the ray of sunken suns at eve, at noon of night, while the moon danced with the fair stranger light. Upreared upon such height arose a pile of gorgeous columns on the unburthened air, flashing from Parian marble that twin smile far down upon the wave that sparkled there, and nursled the young mountain in its lair. Of molten stars their pavement, such as fall through the ebon air, besilvering the pall of their own disillusion while they die, adorning then the dwellings of the sky. A dome, by linked light from heaven let down, sat gently on these columns as a crown. A window of one circular diamond there looked out above into the purple air, and rays from God shot down that meteor chain, and hallowed all the beauty twice again, save when, between the empyrean and that ring, some eager spirit flapped his dusky wing. But on the pillars seraph eyes have seen the dimness of this world, that grayish green that nature loves the best for beauty's grave, lurked in each cornice, round each architrave, and every sculptured cherub thereabout that from his marble dwelling peered out seemed earthly in the shadow of his niche. Achaean statues in a world so rich, friezes from Tadmor and Persepolis, from Baalbec and the stilly clear abyss of beautiful Gomorrah. Oh, the wave is now upon thee, but too late to save. Sound loves to revel in a summer night. Witness the murmur of the grey twilight that stole upon the ear in Irico of many a wild stargazer long ago, that stealeth ever on the ear of him who, musing, gazeth on the distance dim, and sees the darkness coming as a cloud. Is not its form, its voice, most palpable and loud? But what is this? It cometh, and it brings a music with it. 'Tis the rush of wings, a pause, and then a sweeping, falling strain. And Asaki is in her halls again. From the wild energy of wanton haste, her cheeks were flushing and her lips apart. The zone that clung around her gentle waist had burst beneath the heaving of her heart. Within the center of that hall to breathe, she paused and panted, "Xanthi!" all beneath the fairy light that kissed her golden hair, and longed to rest, yet could but sparkle there. Young flowers were whispering in melody to happy flowers that night, and tree to tree fountains were gushing music as they fell in many a starlit grove or moonlight dell. Yet silence came upon material things, fair flowers, bright waterfalls, and angel wings, and sound alone that from the spirit sprang bore burthen to the charm. The maiden sang, "'Neath bluebell or streamer or tufted wild spray that keeps from the dreamer the moonbeam away, bright beings that ponder with half-closing eyes on the stars which your wonder hath drawn from the skies, till they glance through the shade and come down to your brow like eyes of the maiden who calls on you now. Arise from your dreaming in violet bowers, to duty beseeming these star-litten hours, and shake from your tresses encumbered with dew the breath of those kisses that cumber them too. Oh, how without you, love, could angels be blessed, those kisses of true love that lulled ye to rest. Up, shake from your wing each hindering thing, the dew of the night, it would weigh down your flight, and true love caresses, oh, leave them apart, they are light on the tresses, but lead on the heart. Ligeia, Ligeia, my beautiful one, whose harshest idea will to melody run, oh, is it thy will on the breezes to toss, or capriciously still, like the lone albatross, incumbent on night, as she on the air, to keep watch with delight on the harmony there? Ligeia, wherever thy image may be, no magic shall sever thy music from thee. Thou hast bound many eyes in a dreamy sleep, but the strains still arise which thy vigilance keep. The sound of rain which leaps down to the flower and dances again in the rhythm of the shower, the murmur that springs from the growing of grass, are the music of things, but are mottled, alas. Away then, my dearest, oh, hie thee away, to springs that lie clearest beneath the moon ray, to lone lake that smiles in its dream of deep rest, and the many star isles that enjewel its breast, where wild flowers creeping have mingled their shade, on its margin is sleeping full many a maid. Some have left the cool glade and have slept with the bee. Arouse them, my maiden, on moorland and lea. Go, breathe on their slumber, all softly in ear, the musical number they slumbered to hear. For what can awaken an angel so soon, whose sleep hath been taken beneath the cold moon, as the spell which no slumber of witchery may test, the rhythmical number which lulled him to rest? Spirits in wing, and angels to the view, 1,000 seraphs burst the empyrean through, young dreams still hovering on their drowsy flight, seraphs in all but knowledge, the keen light that fell, refracted, through thy bounds afar, O death, from eye of God upon that star. Sweet was that error, sweeter still that death, sweet was that error, even with us the breath of science dims the mirror of our joy. To them 'twere the simoom, and would destroy, for what to them availeth it to know that truth is falsehood, or that bliss is woe? Sweet was their death, with them to die was rife, with the last ecstasy of satiate life. Beyond that death no immortality, but sleep that pondereth, and is not to be. And there, oh, may my weary spirit dwell, apart from heaven's eternity, and yet how far from hell? What guilty spirit, in what shrubbery dim, heard not the stirring summons of that last hymn? But two, they fell, for heaven no grace imparts to those who hear not for their beating hearts. A maiden angel and her seraph lover, oh, where, and ye may seek the wide skies over, was love, the blind, near sober duty known? Unguided love hath fallen, mid tears of perfect moan. He was a goodly spirit, he who fell, a wanderer by mossy mantled well, a gazer on the lights that shine above, a dreamer in the moonbeam by his love. What wonder? For each star is eye-like there, and looks so sweetly down upon beauty's hair, and they, and every mossy spring were holy to his love-haunted heart and melancholy. The night had found, to him a night of woe, upon a mountain crag young Angelo. Beetling it bends athwart the solemn sky, and scowls on starry worlds that down beneath it lie. Here sate he with his love, his dark eye bent with eagle gaze along the firmament. Now turned it upon her, but ever then it trembled to the orb of earth again. Ianthe, dearest, see how dim that ray, how lovely 'tis to look so far away. She seemed not thus upon that autumn eve I left her gorgeous halls, nor mourned to leave. That eve I should remember well, the sun-ray dropped in Lemnos with a spell on the arabesque carving of a gilded hall wherein I sate, and on the draperied wall, and on my eyelids, oh, the heavy light, how drowsily it weighed them into night. On flowers before, and mist, and love they ran, with Persian Sadi and his Gulistan. But oh, that light! I slumbered, death the while stole o'er my senses in that lovely isle, so softly that no single silken hair awoke that slept, or knew that he was there. The last spot of earth's orb I trod upon was a proud temple called the Parthenon. More beauty clung around her columned wall than even thy glowing bosom beats withal. And when old time my wing did disenthrall, thence sprang I, as the eagle from his tower, and years I left spent behind me in an hour. What time upon her airy bounds I hung, one half the garden of her globe was flung, unrolling as a chart unto my view tenantless cities of the desert too. Ianthe, beauty crowded on me then, and half I wished to be again of men. My Angelo! And why of them to be? A brighter dwelling place is here for thee, and greener fields than in yon world above, and woman's loveliness, and passionate love. But list, Ianthe, when the air so soft failed as my pennant spirit leapt aloft, perhaps my brain grew dizzy, but the world I left so late was into chaos hurled, sprang from her station on the winds apart, and rolled aflame the fiery heaven athwart. Methought, my sweet one, then I ceased to soar, and fell, not swiftly as I rose before, but with a downward, tremulous motion through light brazen rays this golden star unto. Not long the measure of my falling hours, for nearest of all stars was thine to ours. Dread star that came amid a night of mirth, a red daedalion on the timid earth. We came, and to thy earth, but not to us, be given Our Lady's bidding to discuss. We came, my love, around, above, below, gay firefly of the night we come and go, nor ask a reason save the angel nod. She grants to us as granted by her God. But Angelo then thine grey time unfurled, never his fairy wing o'er fairer world. Dim was its little disk, and angel eyes alone could see the phantom in the skies. When first Al-Araf knew her course to be headlong thitherward o'er the starry sea, but when its glory swelled upon the sky as glowing beauty bust beneath man's eye, we paused before the heritage of men, and thy star trembled, as doth beauty then. Thus in discourse the lovers whiled away the night that waned and brought no day. They fell, for heaven to them no hope imparts, who hear not for the beating of their hearts. Footnote 1. A star was discovered by Tycho Brahe which appeared suddenly in the heavens, attained in a few days a brilliancy surpassing that of Jupiter, then as suddenly disappeared and has never been seen since. Footnote 2. On Santa Maura, Olim de Eucalia. Footnote 3. Sappho. Footnote 4. This flower is much noticed by Leeuwenhoek and Tournefort. The bee, feeding upon its blossom, becomes intoxicated. Footnote 5. Clidia, the Chrysanthemum peruvianum, or, to employ a better-known term, the turnsol, which turns continually towards the sun, covers itself, like Peru, the country from which it comes, with dewy clouds which cool and refresh its flowers during the most violent heat of the day. B. de Saint-Pierre. Footnote 6. There is cultivated in the King's Garden at Paris a species of serpentine aloe without prickles, whose large and beautiful flower exhales a strong odor of the vanilla during the time of its expansion, which is very short. It does not blow till towards the month of July. You then perceive it gradually open its petals, expand them, fade, and die. Saint-Pierre. Footnote 7. There is found in the Rhone a beautiful lily of the Vallisnerian kind. Its stem will stretch to the length of 3 or 4 feet, thus preserving its head above water in the swellings of the river. Footnote 8. The hyacinth. Footnote 9. It is a fiction of the Indians that Cupid was first seen floating in one of these down the river Ganges, and that he still loves the cradle of his childhood. Footnote 10. And golden vials full of odors, which are the prayers of the saints. Revelations, St. John. Footnote 11. The humanitarians held that God was to be understood as having really a human form. Vide Clarke's Sermons. The drift of Milton's argument leads him to employ language which would appear, at first sight, to verge upon their doctrine, but it will be seen immediately that he guards himself against the charge of having adopted one of the most ignorant errors of the dark ages of the Church. Dr. Sumner's Notes on Milton's Christian Doctrine. This opinion, in spite of many testimonies to the contrary, could never have been very general. Andaeus, a Syrian of Mesopotamia, was condemned for the opinion as heretical. He lived in the beginning of the 4th century. His disciples were called anthropomorphites. Vide Dupin. Among Milton's minor poems are these lines: Dicite sacrorum praesedes nemorum dese, etc. Quis ille primus cuius ex imagine natura solers finxit humanum genus? Eternus, incorruptus, aqua vaius polo, unusque et universus exemplar Dei. And afterwards, non qui profundum caecitas lumen dedit, dircais augur, vidit hunc alto, sinu, etc. Footnote 12. Seltsamen tocter Jovis, seinem Schoskinde der Fantasie. Goethe. Footnote 13. Sightless, too small to be seen. Legge. Footnote 14. I have often noticed a peculiar movement of the fireflies. They will collect in a body and fly off from a common center into innumerable radii. Footnote 15. Teresea, or Teresia, the island mentioned by Seneca, which in a moment arose from the sea to the eyes of astonished mariners. Footnote 16. Some star which from the ruined roof of shaked Olympus by mischance did fall. Milton. Footnote 17. Voltaire, in speaking of Persepolis, says, Je connais bien l'admiration que inspirent ces ruines, mais on peut les ériger au pied d'une chaîne de rochers stériles. Peut-il être un chef d'œuvre des Alpes? Footnote 18. Oh, the wave. Ula de Goisi is the Turkish appellation, but on its own shores it is called Baliar Loth or Almotana. There were undoubtedly more than 2 cities engulfed in the Dead Sea. In the valley of Siddim were 5, Adra, Zeboim, Zoar, Sodom, and Gomorrah. Stephen of Byzantium mentions 8 and Strabo 13 engulfed, but the last is out of all reason. It is said, Tacitus, Strabo, Josephus, Daniel of St. Saba, Nau, Andrel, Troilo, Darvieux, that after an excessive drought, the vestiges of columns, walls, etc. are seen above the surface. At any season such remains may be discovered by looking down into the transparent lake, and at such distance as would argue the existence of many settlements in the space now usurped by the asphaltites. Footnote 19. Iraco Chaldea. Footnote 20. I have often thought I could distinctly hear the sound of the darkness as it stole over the horizon. Footnote 21. Fairies use flowers for their charactery. Merry Wives of Windsor. Footnote 22. In Scripture is this passage: "The sun shall not harm thee by day, nor the moon by night." It is perhaps not generally known that the moon, in Egypt, has the effect of producing blindness to those who sleep with the face exposed to its rays, to which circumstances the passage evidently alludes. Footnote 23. The albatross is said to sleep on the wing. Footnote 24. I met with this idea in an old English tale which I am now unable to obtain and quote from memory. The very essence and, as it were, springaheaded and origine of all musique is the very pleasant sound which the trees of the forest do make when they grow. Footnote 25. The wild bee will not sleep in the shade if there be moonlight. The rhyme in the verse, as in one about 60 lines before, has an appearance of affectation. It is, however, imitated from Sir W. Scott, or rather from Claude Halcrow, in whose mouth I admired its effect. Oh, were there an island, though ever so wild, where woman might smile and no man be beguiled. Footnote 26. With the Arabians there is a medium between heaven and hell, where men suffer no punishment, but yet do not attain that tranquil and even happiness which they suppose to be characteristic of heavenly enjoyment. Uno rompido sueño, un día puro, alegre, libre, quiera, libre de amor, de zelo, de odio, de esperanza, de recelo. Luis Ponce de Leon. Sorrow is not excluded from Al-Araf, but it is that sorrow which the living love to cherish for the dead, and which, in some minds, resembles the delirium of opium. The passionate excitement of love and the buoyancy of spirit attendant upon intoxication are less its holy pleasures, the price of which, to those souls who make choice of Al-Araf as their residence after life, is final death and annihilation. Footnote 27. There be tears of perfect moan wept for thee in Helicon. Milton. Footnote 28. It was in Tyre in 1687, the most elevated spot in Athens. Footnote 29. Shadowing more beauty in their airy brows than have the white breasts of the Queen of Love. Marlowe. Footnote 30. Pennon for Pinion. Milton. End of section 43.
Section 44 of the Complete Poetical Works. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Complete Poetical Works by Edgar Allan Poe. Section 44. Tamerlan. Kind solace in a dying hour, such, Father, is not now my theme. I will not madly deem that power of earth may shrive me of the sin unearthly pride hath revelled in. I have no time to dote or dream. You call it hope, that fire of fire. It is but agony of desire. If I can hope, O God, I can. Its fount is holier, more divine. I would not call thee fool, old man, but such is not a gift of thine. Know thou the secret of a spirit bowed from its wild pride into shame. O yearning heart, I did inherit thy withering portion with the fame the searing glory which hath shone amid the jewels of my throne, halo of hell, and with a pain not hell shall make me fear again. O craving heart for the lost flowers and sunshine of my summer hours, the undying voice of that dead time, with its interminable chime, rings in the spirit of a spell upon thy emptiness, a knell. I have not always been as now, the fevered diadem on my brow I claimed and won usurpingly. Hath not the same fierce heirdom given Rome to the Caesar, this to me? The heritage of a kingly mind, and a proud spirit which hath striven triumphantly with humankind. On mountain soil I first drew life, the mists of the Taglay have shed nightly their dews upon my head, and I believe the winged strife and tumult of the headlong air have nestled in my very hair. So late from heaven that dew it fell, mid dreams of an unholy night, upon me with the touch of hell, while the red flashing of the light from clouds that hung like banners o'er appeared to my half-closing eye the pageantry of monarchy. And the deep trumpet thunder's roar came hurriedly upon me, telling of human battle, where my voice, my own voice, silly child, was swelling. Oh, how my spirit would rejoice, and leap within me at the cry, the battle cry of victory. The rain came down upon my head, unsheltered, and the heavy wind rendered me mad and deaf and blind. It was but man, I thought, who shed laurels upon me, and the rush, the torrent of the chilly air gurgled within my ear the crush of empires with the captive's prayer, the hum of suitors, and the tone of flattery round a sovereign's throne. My passions from that hapless hour usurped a tyranny which men have deemed since I have reached power, my innate nature, be it so. But, Father, there lived one who then, in my boyhood, when their fire burned with a still intenser glow, for passion must with youth expire, e'en then who knew this iron heart in woman's weakness had a part. I have no words, alas, to tell the loveliness of loving well, nor would I now attempt to trace the more than beauty of a face, whose lineaments upon my mind are shadows on the unstable wind. Thus I remember having dwelt some page of early lore upon, with loitering eye, till I have felt the letters with their meaning melt to fantasies with none. Oh, she was worthy of all love, love as in infancy was mine. 'Twas such as angel minds above might envy, her young heart the shrine on which my every hope and thought were incense, then a goodly gift, for they were childish and upright, pure as her young example taught. Why did I leave it, and adrift, trust to the fire within for light? We grew in age and love together, roaming the forest and the wild, my breast her shield in wintry weather, and when the friendly sunshine smiled, and she would mark the opening skies, I saw no heaven but in her eyes. Young love's first lesson is the heart, for mid that sunshine and those smiles, when from our little cares apart, and laughing at her girlish wiles, I'd throw me on her throbbing breast, and pour my spirit out in tears, there was no need to speak the rest, no need to quiet any fears of her who asked no reason why, but turned on me her quiet eye. Yet more than worthy of the love my spirit struggled with and strove, when on the mountain peak alone ambition lent it a new tone. I had no being but in thee, the world and all it did contain, in the earth, the air, the sea, its joy, its little lot of pain, that was new pleasure, the ideal, dim vanities of dreams by night, and dimmer nothings which were real, shadows and a more shadowy light, parted upon their misty wings, and so confusedly became thine image and a name, two separate, yet most intimate things. I was ambitious. Have you known the passion, Father? You have not. A cottager, I marked a throne of half the world as all my own, and murmured at such lowly lot. But just like any other dream, upon the vapor of the dew my own had passed, did not the beam of beauty which did, while it threw, the minute, the hour, the day oppress my mind with double loveliness. We walked together on the crown of a high mountain which looked down afar from its proud natural towers of rock and forest on the hills, the dwindled hills, begirt with bowers, and shouting with 1,000 rills. I spoke to her of power and pride, but mystically, in such guise that she might deem it naught beside the moment's converse. In her eyes I read, perhaps too carelessly, a mingled feeling with my own. The flush on her bright cheek to me seemed to become a queenly throne, too well that I should let it be light in the wilderness alone. I wrapped myself in grandeur then, and donned a visionary crown, yet it was not that fantasy had thrown her mantle over me, but that among the rabble, men, lion ambition is chained down, and crouches to a keeper's hand. Not so in deserts, where the grand, the wild, the terrible conspire with their own breath to fan his fire. Look round thee now on Samarcand. Is she not queen of earth, her pride above all cities, in her hand their destinies? In all beside of glory which the world hath known, stands she not nobly and alone? Falling, her veriest stepping stone shall form the pedestal of a throne. And who her sovereign? Timur, he whom the astonished people saw striding o'er empires haughtily, a diademed outlaw. O human love, thou spirit given on earth of all we hope in heaven, which fall'st into the soul like rain upon the Siroc withered plain, and failing in thy power to bless, but leavest the heart a wilderness. Idea, which bindest life around with music of so strange a sound, and beauty of so wild a birth, farewell, for I have won the earth. When hope, the eagle that towered, could see no cliff beyond him in the sky, his pinions were bent droopingly, and homeward turned his softened eye. 'Twas sunset, when the sun will part, there comes a sullenness of heart to him who still would look upon the glory of the summer sun. That soul will hate the evening mist, so often lovely, and will list to the sound of the coming darkness, known to those whose spirits hearken as one who in a dream of night would fly, but cannot, from a danger nigh. What though the moon, though the white moon, shed all the splendor of her noon? Her smile is chilly, and her beam in that time of dreariness will seem so like you gather in your breath a portrait taken after death. And boyhood is a summer sun whose waning is the dreariest one. For all we live to know is known, and all we seek to keep hath flown. Let life then as the day flower fall, with the noonday beauty which is all. I reached my home no more, for all had flown who made it so. I passed from out its mossy door, and though my tread was soft and low, a voice came from the threshold stone, of one whom I had earlier known. Oh, I defy thee, hell, to show on beds of fire that burn below an humbler heart, a deeper woe. Father, I firmly do believe, I know for death who comes for me, from regions of the blest afar, where there is nothing to deceive, hath left his iron gate ajar. And rays of truth you cannot see are flashing through eternity. I do believe that Eblis hath a snare in every human path, Else how, when in the holy grove I wandered of the idol Love, who daily scents his snowy wings with incense of burnt offerings, from the most unpolluted things, whose pleasant bowers are yet so riven above with trellised rays from heaven, no mote may shun, no tiniest fly, the lightning of his eagle eye. How was it that ambition crept, unseen amid the revels there, till growing bold he laughed and leapt in the tangles of love's very hair? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
To Helen by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org. Helen, thy beauty is to me like those Nicean barks of yore, that gently o'er a perfumed sea the weary wayworn wanderer bore to his own native shore. On desperate seas long wont to roam, thy hyacinth hair, thy classic face, thy naiad airs have brought me home to the glory that was Greece, to the grandeur that was Rome. Lo, in yon brilliant window niche, how statue-like I see thee stand, the agate lamp within thy hand. Ah, Psyche, from the regions which are Holy Land. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Valley of the Unrest by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Betsy Walker, Santa Fe, New Mexico. Once it smiled, a silent dell where the people did not dwell. They had gone unto the wars, trusting to the mild-eyed stars, nightly from their azure towers, to keep watch above the flowers, in the midst of which all day the red sunlight lazily lay. Now each visitor shall confess the sad valley's restlessness. Nothing there is motionless, nothing save the airs that brood over the magic solitude. Ah, by no wind are stirred those trees that palpitate like the chill seas around the misty Hebrides. Ah, by no wind those clouds are driven that rustle through the unquiet heaven unceasingly from morn till even, over the violets there that lie in myriad types of the human eye, over the lilies that wave and weep above a nameless grave. They wave. From out their fragrant tops eternal dews come down in drops. They weep. From off their delicate stems perennial tears descend in gems. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Israfel by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Mike Overby, Midland, Washington. The title comes with a footnote. And the angel Israfel, whose heartstrings are a lute, and who has the sweetest voice of all of God's creatures. Quran. End of footnote. In heaven a spirit doth dwell, whose heartstrings are a lute. None sing so wildly well as the angel Israfel, and the giddy stars, so legends tell, ceasing their hymns, attend the spell of his voice, all mute. Tottering above, in her highest noon, the enamored moon blushes with love, while to listen the red levin, with the rapid Pleiades even, which were 7, pauses in heaven. And they say, the starry choir and the other listening things, that Israfeli's fire is owing to that lyre by which he sits and sings, the trembling living wire of those unusual strings. But the skies that angel trod, where deep thoughts are a duty, where love's a grow-up God, where the hoary glances are imbued with all the beauty which we worship in the star. Therefore thou art not wrong, Israfeli, who despisest the unimpassioned song. To thee the laurels belong, best bard, because the wisest. Merry live and long. The ecstasies above with thy burning measures suit, thy grief, thy joy, thy hate, thy love, with the fervor of thy lute. Well may the stars be mute. Yes, heaven is thine, but this is a world of sweets and sours. Our flowers are merely flowers, and the shadow of thy perfect bliss is the sunshine of ours. If I could dwell where Israfel hath dwelt, and he where I, he might not sing so wildly well a mortal melody, while a bolder note than this might swell from my lyre within the sky. 1836. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. To blank, I heed not that my earthly lot, by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Mike Overby, Midland, Washington. I heed not that my earthly lot hath little of earth in it, that years of love have been forgot in the hatred of a minute. I mourn not that the desolate are happier, sweet, than I, but that you sorrow for my fate, who am a passer-by. 1829. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. To blank, the bowers whereat in dreams I see, by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Mike Overby, Midland, Washington. The bowers whereat in dreams I see, the wantonest singing birds, are lips and all thy melody of lip-begotten words. Thine eyes in heaven of heart enshrined then desolately fall, O God, on my funereal mind, like starlight on a pall. Thy heart, I wake and sigh, and sleep to dream till day of the truth that gold can never buy, of the baubles that it may. 1829. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
To the River by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Fair river, in thy bright clear flow of crystal wandering water, thou art an emblem of the glow of beauty, the unhidden heart, the playful maziness of art in old Alberto's daughter. But when within thy waves she looks, which glistens then and trembles, why then the prettiest of brooks her worshipper resembles. For in his heart, as in thy stream, her image deeply lies, his heart which trembles at the beam of her soul-searching eyes. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Song by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Bruce Kachuk. I saw thee on thy bridal day, when a burning blush came o'er thee, though happiness around thee lay, the world all love before thee, and in thine eye a kindling light, whatever it might be, was all on earth my aching sight of loveliness could see. That blush, perhaps, was maiden shame, as such it well may pass, though its glow hath raised a fiercer flame in the breast of him, alas, who saw thee on that bridal day, when that deep blush would come o'er thee, though happiness around thee lay, the world all love before thee. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Spirits of the Dead by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. Thy soul shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the great tombstone, not one of all the crowd to pry, into thine hour of secrecy. Be silent in that solitude, which is not loneliness, for then the spirits of the dead who stood in life before thee are again, and death around thee, and their will shall overshadow thee. Be still. The night, though clear, shall frown, and the stars shall not look down from their high thrones in the heaven, with light like hope to mortals given. But the red orbs, without beam, to thy weariness shall seem as a burning and a fever, which would cling to thee forever. Now our thoughts thou shalt not banish, now our visions ne'er to vanish. From thy spirit shall they pass no more, like dewdrops from the grass. The breeze, the breath of God, is still, and the mist upon the hill, shadowy, shadowy yet unbroken, is the symbol and the token. How it hangs upon the trees, a mystery of mysteries. End a poem. This recording is in the public domain. A Dream by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. In visions of the dark night I've dreamed of joy departed, but a waking dream of life and light hath left me broken-hearted. Ah, what is not a dream by day to him whose eyes are cast on things around him with a ray turned back upon the past? That holy dream, while all the world were chiding, hath cheered me as a lovely beam, a lonely spirit guiding. What though that light through storm and night so trembled from afar? What could there be more purely bright than truth's day star? End a poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Romance by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Romance who loves to nod and sing, with drowsy head and folded wing, among the green leaves as they shake far down within some shadowy lake. To me a painted paroquet hath been a most familiar bird, taught me my alphabet to say, to lisp my very earliest word, while in the wild wood I did lie, a child with a most knowing eye. Of late eternal condor years so shake the very heaven on high with tumult as they thunder by. I have no time for idle cares, though gazing on the unquiet sky, and when an hour with calmer wings its down upon my spirit flings, that little time with lyre and rhyme to while away forbidden things, my heart would feel to be a crime unless it trembled with the strings. 1829. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Fairyland by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. Dim vales and shadowy floods and cloudy-looking woods, whose forms we can't discover for the tears that drip all over huge moons there wax and wane, again, 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 every moment of the night, forever changing places, and they put out the starlight with a breath from their pale faces. About 12 by the moon dial, one more filmy than the rest, a kind which, upon trial, they have found to be the best, comes down, still down and down, with its center on the crown of a mountain's eminence, while its wide circumference in easy drapery falls over hamlets, over halls, wherever they may be, o'er the strange woods, o'er the sea, over spirits on the wing, over every drowsy thing, and buries them up quite in a labyrinth of light. And then, how deep, oh deep, is the passion of their sleep, In the morning they arise, and their moony covering is soaring in the skies, while the tempests, as they toss, like almost anything, or a yellow albatross, they use the moon no more for the same end as before, with delicate a tint, which I think extravagant. Its atomies, however, into a shower dissever, of which those butterflies of earth who seek the skies, and so come down again, never contented thing, have brought a specimen upon their quivering wings. 1831. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Lake by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. In spring of youth it was my lot to haunt of the wide world a spot, the which I could not love the less, so lovely was the loneliness of a wild lake with black rock bound, and the tall pines that towered around. But when the night had thrown her pall upon the spot, as upon all, and the mystic wind went by, murmuring in melody, then, ah then, I would awake to the terror of the lone lake. Yet that terror was not fright, but a tremulous delight, a feeling not the jeweled mind could teach or bribe me to define, nor love, although the love were thine. Death was in that poisonous wave, and in its gulf a fitting grave for him who thence could solace bring to his lone imagining, whose solitary soul could make an Eden of that dim lake. 1827. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Evening Star by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. 'Twas noontide of summer, and midtime of night, and stars in their orbits shone pale through the light of the brighter cold moon. Mid planets her slaves, herself in the heavens, her beam on the waves. I gazed a while on her cold smile, too cold for me. There passed as a shroud a fleecy cloud, and I turned away to thee, proud evening star, in thy glory afar, and dearer thy beam shall be. For joy to my heart is the proud part thou bearest in heaven at night, and more I admire thy distant fire than that colder lowly light. 1827. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Imitation by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Anita Slava Martinez. A dark, unfathomed tide of interminable pride, a mystery and a dream should my early life seem. I say that dream was fraught with the wild and waking thought of beings that have been, which my spirit hath not seen. Had I let them pass me by with a dreaming eye, let none of earth inherit that vision on my spirit. Those thoughts I would control as a spell upon his soul, for that bright hope at last and that light time have passed, and my worldly rest hath gone with a sigh as it passed on. I care not though it perish with the thought I then did cherish. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Happiest Day by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Bruce Kachuk. The happiest day, the happiest hour, my seared and blighted heart hath known. The highest hope of pride and power I feel hath flown. Of power, said I, Yes, such I ween, but they have vanished long, alas. The visions of my youth have been, but let them pass. And pride, what have I now with thee? Another brow may even inherit the venom thou hast poured on me. Be still, my spirit. The happiest day, the happiest hour, mine eye shall see, have ever seen, the brightest glance of pride and power, I feel have been. But where that hope of pride and power now offered with the pain, even then I felt that brightest hour I would not live again. For on its wing was dark alloy, and as it fluttered fell an essence powerful to destroy a soul that knew it well.
End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Hymn, translation from the Greek, by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Bruce Kachuk. Hymn to Aristogaton and Harmodius. Wreathed in myrtle, my sword I'll conceal, like those champions devoted and brave, when they plunged in the tyrant their steel, and to Athens deliverance gave. Beloved heroes, your deathless souls roam in the joy-breathing isles of the blest, where the mighty of old have their home, where Achilles and Diomed rest. In fresh myrtle my blade I'll entwine, like Harmodius the gallant and good, when he made at the tutelar's shrine a libation of tyranny's blood. Ye deliverers of Athens from shame, ye avengers of liberty's wrongs, endless ages shall cherish your fame, embalmed in their echoing songs.
End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Dreams by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Bruce Kachuk. Oh, that my young life were a lasting dream, my spirit not awakening till the beam of an eternity should bring the morrow. Yes, though that long dream were of hopeless sorrow, 'twere better than the cold reality of waking life, to him whose heart must be, and hath been still, upon the lovely earth, a chaos of deep passion from his birth. But should it be, that dream eternally continuing, as dreams have been to me in my young boyhood, should it thus be given, 'twere folly still to hope for higher heaven. For I have revelled when the sun was bright i' the summer sky, in dreams of living light and loveliness, have left my very heart inclines of my imaginary apart from mine own home, with beings that have been of mine own thought. What more could I have seen? 'Twas once, and only once, and the wild hour from my remembrance shall not pass. Some power or spell had bound me, 'twas the chilly wind came o'er me in the night, and left behind its image on my spirit. Or the moon shone on my slumbers in her lofty noon too coldly, or the stars. Howe'er it was, that dream was that night wind. Let it pass. I have been happy, though in a dream. I have been happy, and I love the theme. Dreams in their vivid coloring of life, as in that fleeting shadowy misty strife of semblance with reality, which brings to the delirious eye more lovely things of paradise and love and all my own, than young hope in his sunniest hour hath known. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
In Youth I Have Known One by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. How often we forget all time, when lone admiring nature's universal throne, her woods, her wilds, her mountains, the intense reply of hers to our intelligence. In youth I have known one with whom the earth in secret communing held, as he with it, in daylight and in beauty from his birth, whose fervid flickering torch of life was lit from the sun and stars, whence he had drawn forth a passionate light such for his spirit was fit, and yet that spirit knew, not in the hour of its own fervor, what had o'er it power. Perhaps it may be that my mind is wrought to a fervor by the moonbeam that hangs o'er, but I will half believe that wild light fraught with more of sovereignty than ancient lore hath ever told. Or is it of a thought the unembodied essence, and no more that with a quickening spell doth o'er us pass, as dew of the night time o'er the summer grass? Doth o'er us pass, when as the expanding eye to the loved object, so the tear to the lid will start, which lately slept in apathy. And yet it need not be, that object, hid from us in life, but common, which doth lie each hour before us, but then only bid with a strange sound as of a harp-string broken to wake us. 'Tis a symbol and a token of what in other worlds shall be, and given in beauty by our God to those alone who otherwise would fall from life and heaven, drawn by their heart's passion, and that tone, that high tone of the spirit which hath striven, though not with faith, with godliness, whose throne with desperate energy it hath beaten down, wearing its own deep feeling as a crown. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Paean by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. How shall the burial rite be read, the solemn song be sung, the requiem for the loveliest dead that ever died so young? Her friends are gazing on her, and on her gaudy bier, and we, oh, to dishonor dead beauty with a tear. They loved her for her wealth, they hated her for her pride, but she grew in feeble health, and they love her that she died. They tell me, while they speak of her costly broidered pall, that my voice is growing weak, that I should not sing at all, or that my tone should be tuned to such solemn song, so mournfully, that the dead may feel no wrong. But she is gone above, with young hope at her side, and I am drunk with love of the dead who is my bride, of the dead, dead who lies all perfumed there, with the death upon her eyes and the life upon her hair. Thus on the coffin loud and long I strike, the murmur sent through the grey chambers to my song shall be the accompaniment. Thou diedst in thy life's June, but thou didst not die too fair, thou didst not die too soon, nor with too calm an air. From more than friends on earth thy love and life are riven, to join the untainted mirth of more than thrones in heaven. Therefore, to thee this night I will no requiem raise, but waft with thee on thy flight, with a paean of old days. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Notes by Edgar Allan Poe. Read for LibriVox.org by Kathleen. On the poems written in youth, little comment is needed. This section includes the pieces printed for the first volume of 1827, which was subsequently suppressed. Such poems from the first and second published volumes of 1829 and 1831 as have not already been given in their revised versions, and a few others collected from various sources. Note on LRF. LRF first appeared with the sonnet to silence prefixed to it in 1829, and is, substantially, as originally issued in the edition for 1831. However, this poem, its author's longest, was introduced by the following 29 lines, which have been omitted in all subsequent collections. Mysterious star, thou wert my dream all a long summer night. Be now my theme, by this clear stream of thee will I write. Meantime, from afar, bathe me in light. Thy world has not the dross of ours, yet all the beauty, all the flowers that list our love or deck our bowers in dreamy gardens, where do lie dreamy maidens all the day, while the silver winds of Circassy on violet couches faint away. Little, oh, little dwells in thee like unto what on earth we see. Beauty's eye is here the bluest in the falsest and untruest. On the sweetest air doth float the most sad and solemn note. If thee be broken hearts, joy so peacefully departs, that its echo still doth dwell, like the murmur in the shell. Thou, thy truest type of grief, is the gentle falling leaf. Thou, thy framing is so holy, sorrow is not melancholy. Note on Tamerlan. The earliest version of Tamerlan was included in the suppressed volume of 1827, but differs very considerably from the poem as now published. The present draft, besides innumerable verbal alterations and improvements upon the original, is more carefully punctuated, and, the lines being indented, presents a more pleasing appearance, to the eye at least. Note to Helen, the Valley of Unrest, Israfel, etc. To Helen, first appeared in the 1831 volume, as did also the Valley of Unrest, as the Valley Nis, Israfel, and one or two others of the youthful pieces. Note on Romance. The poem styled Romance constituted the preface of the 1829 volume, but with the addition of the following lines: succeeding years, too wild for song, then rolled like tropic storms along, where, though the garish lights that fly dying along the troubled sky, lay bare, through vistas thunder riven, the blackness of the general heaven, that very blackness yet doth fling light on the lightning's silver wing. For being an idle boy, lang syne, who read Anacreon and drank wine, I early found Anacreon rhymes were almost passionate sometimes, and my strange alchemy of brain his pleasures always turned to pain, his naivete to wild desire, his wit to love, his wine to fire. And so, being young and dip in folly, I fell in love with melancholy, and used to throw my earthly rest and quiet all away in jest. I could not love except where death was mingling his with beauty's breath, or Hymen, time, and destiny were stalking between her and me. But now my soul hath too much room. Gone are the glory and the gloom. The black hath mellowed into grey, and all the fires are fading away. My draught of passion hath been deep. I revelled, and I now would sleep. And after drunkenness of soul succeeds the glories of the bowl, an idle longing night and day to dream my very life away. But dreams, of those who dream as I, aspiringly, are damned, and die. Yet should I swear I mean alone, my note so very shrilly blown, to break upon time's monotone, while yet my vapid joy and grief are tintless of the yellow leaf. Why not an imp the grey-beard hath will shake his shadow in my path, and e'en the grey-beard will o'erlook connivingly my dreaming book. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.